trying to learn this. People used to operate with their elbow over the field, so you couldn't learn anything. They wanted to keep it all to themselves. They didn't want anybody to learn it.
You know, they wouldn't allow people into the meetings other than plastic surgeons. The doors were closed to us, which I felt was very bad.
I used to listen to Bobby's history, and it used to say, when's that going to end? And now I sort of sit at the edge of my chair.
Richard, I wondered if you could share with us some of your early memories of really what it was that got us started, who were the players and the actors, and what are your best recollections of those early days in the 60s?
I've always considered that plastic surgery was a legitimate part of otolaryngology. I can either take the blame or the credit for our name because I insisted on adding the reconstructive surgery. I insisted on the name Academy because I thought that it felt more academic.
The desires and goals that you had as one of the founders of this organization 50 years ago. Can you tell me about that?
We started out basically as a teaching group. We wanted to teach otolaryngologists and even each other. That's where the study club came in.
We had a very interesting concept that we'd visited other plastic surgeons one day that doing this work, otolaryngologists, and the man would put on a clinic.
If you were an individual who was interested, you had to find somebody else who was interested, and then maybe travel to his city one day and watch him operate, and then sometime off in the future he'd come to yours and watch you operate.
And we'd criticize his technique, and he'd give us lunch. Yeah, it was very interesting. And the man didn't know he was making errors. We'd point out his errors and point out his good points, and it was very, very helpful to all of us.
And over a period of time there might be 10 or 12 people who would form a study group.
Let me read who was in that group because you'll get a lot of the original leaders. Jack Anderson, Oscar Becker, John Dickinson, Louis Fite, Jess Fuchs, Joseph Goldman, Benito Risch, Abe Silver, I. Trusley, and Bill Wright.
And then there was another meeting that we heard about that had some interest in the formation of this academy that took place in the Bahamas in 1963.
There was an increasing number of people who wanted to learn cosmetic surgery and reconstructive surgery who came from the field of otolaryngology. And these were the people who were taking those first courses and who eventually came together down in the Bahamas and formed the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery.
How were you involved in that?
Well, I was the program chairman for that.
So what was the purpose of that meeting and the effect of that meeting?
The whole purpose of this amalgamation was to make a strong society, a society that could be above criticism, to stand our ground in all the medical politics and with senior societies, including the general societies of the College of Surgeons, the AMA, and so on.
It was an uncharted territory as far as I was concerned, and all otolaryngologists, because when I started doing noses, rhinoplasty, my main opposition came from otolaryngologists. It was heresy. And then, of course, when I started to do facelifts, there was nobody there to teach me, obviously. And then I got the heat from the general plastic men. And then I branched out into eye surgery. And then I got the heat from everybody. From the ENT, general plastic, and the eye men.
What would you say were your particular primary concerns?
In the education. But we were also fighting at that time for recognition by other otolaryngologists and by the senior otolaryngology societies. And Ira Tresley was the chairman of the nominating committee and told me specifically that they nominated me for president because of connections with the other senior societies.
In regard to the regional surgeon, just expand a bit as to what value that had in creating a reality of facial plastic surgery as it came to be.
In New York at the Waldorf Astoria, Conley gave the best impromptu speech I've ever heard and said that this is our region. And it was dramatic, and it really brought in the term regional surgeon, where we were really above criticism. You get right down to it, we were better trained in this area.
Perhaps the most important factor is the ability to do the work that you profess that you want to do or can do, and then to deliver that work or that service to the patient and to the public.
Now, we had bigger fights at that time. You might say we had a lot of trees to cut down. Now, in a lot of ways, you just have to mow the grass.
My interest in facial plastic surgery came from the influence of my father. He was the fourth president and is the longest surviving president at the present time.
I am William Silver, better known as Billy. When I was very young, my hobby was photography, and A.G. Silver would come to Atlanta to perform rhinoplastic surgery, and because of my interest in photography, I took all of the pre-op photographs for his patients. And after the surgery was completed and the patients were there for follow-up, I would take the post-op pictures, and I saw the incredible excitement that these people had, and I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up.
It wasn't until the academy came around that there were fellowship programs, courses that we could learn from.
My earliest memories of the academy go back before I even knew what it was, when my father used to go down to the meetings and coming back with things that had these initials on it. And I would look at my father and what he was doing, and I saw no better example. Love of getting up and going to work and enjoying the interactions with patients.
Facial plastics, it's really a family, and it's a family I grew up in. I think it's important to maintain that sense of family.
Another influence was the annual courses they had at Mount Sinai. Beginning in my residency, we had courses in rhinoplasty, which were run by Dr. Bobby Simons, one of my other mentors from Mount Sinai, in conjunction with Dr. William Lawson, Bill Friedman. We had courses in blepharoplasty and facelift surgery by Dr. Sidney Fierstein.
I was, a chief resident, and I had good cop, bad cop. I had George Sisson in one ear saying, you want to be my head neck fellow. And I had Gene Tardy in the other ear saying, no, you want to go into facial plastics. And I listened to Gene, and, Gene introduced me to Ted, and Sisson caved after a while and introduced me to Jack, and Jack led to Calvin, and that's what this story is all about.
I wasn't really smart enough to be an internist or do any sort of esoteric sort of medicine, but I did like creative. I always have been artistic. Minor in art in college. I like to draw and create things. So facial plastic surgery really was a natural extension of my artistic interest and some of the interest in psychology that I also had.
I was always good with my hands. I could always fix things around the house. And believe it or not, I saw MASH when I was growing up, a TV show, and I just thought surgeons were really, really fascinating. My mom saw that, and my mom was an artist, and she sort of put the two together, artistry and surgery, and she recommended facial plastic surgery.
My interest in facial plastic surgery probably started about mid-level of my residency, and I think in particular sort of suited my personality of on the one hand,
being a little bit compulsive and liking the meticulous side of surgery. I think I liked the creative side and the artistic elements that it brought to it. And I got a glimpse that it really made some patients really happy. It had a big impact on people.
I was born actually with rather large protruding ears. Around 1984-85, Top Gun came out, and all of a sudden every guy who was in senior in high school to college wanted to have the Tom Cruise short military-style haircut. So I couldn't get the cool Tom Cruise haircut, so I had an otoplasty done, and it sort of made me realize that people who get cosmetic surgery, not just to look beautiful, but just to fit in. And so I think right there I was in college, the son of a surgeon, pre-med, had a life-changing operation, and kind of went forward with that, and that led me, I think, to what I do today, which is facial plastic surgery.
I was a student, and Lisa Orloff allowed me to cut the skin on a patient. It was the first time I ever cut real live human skin, and it just blew me away. I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. And seeing how we could reconstruct missing jaws and tongues and throats at that time, just, I mean, it completely diverted my path, actually, from primary care, which was my entire interest to that point, into facial plastic and reconstructive surgery.
The Columbine massacre occurred, and I vividly remember being a resident sitting in the surgical lounge with everything shut down, waiting for the victims of that massacre to come through our hospital. When they started coming, one of our patients was a 16-year-old boy who was shot at point-blank range in the face. That reconstructed, taking a fibula, taking free flaps, and making a human being out of what was a freak, really altered my entire life. And from that point forth, that's what I wanted to do.
I had initially thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. My team operated on a patient who had an infratemporal fossa tumor that required excision and reconstruction with a fibular flap. And I said, who did this? And they said, a facial plastic surgeon. And the person who told me was actually a member of the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. And he saw the light bulbs go off. It was just a truly deciding moment for me.
And John Frodel, who was at Hopkins at the time when I was on his rotation, did a paramedian forehead flap. And the idea that you could make a nose out of nothing was remarkable. And I've always been interested in painting and art, and it seemed a natural fit of what I love to do, and yet also a great way to take care of people.
Many years before the Academy was formed, it was difficult for individuals to learn about facial plastic procedures, especially rhinoplasty. Some surgeons would hide what they did in sort of a shroud. They put covers over the windows in their operating rooms. They wouldn't allow people in. But one of the things about our academy has always been openness of teaching.
The academy had senior people wanting to share their information, wanting to teach me and all the other fellows and colleagues what they knew about facial plastic surgery. So that gets you excited to learn.
And you'll see senior members of our academy sitting front row at every meeting and taking notes and continuing to learn. And I think that rubs off to the entire membership.
Almost all of the individuals and societies who criticize these courses now give courses themselves.
The turning point in the Academy's effort to upgrade training programs came with the approval of the Essentials of Otolaryngology in 1975 by the AMA's Liaison Committee on Graduate Medical Education.
For the first time ever, these facial plastic surgical techniques were required for board specialty certification.
The major overwhelming strength of this academy has always been its capability in teaching and its willingness to teach without any question anyone who is willing to learn.
What I really did was about once a month I'd fly somewhere and watch somebody, and I'd basically fly out and watch them operate for a day. I always bought a salmon at the airport, one of those dried salmon, so I'd have a gift and I'd show up, be nice, not bother anybody, give them a salmon, watch them operate and leave. And I did that once a month for many years, and saw some of the best in the world, and it really was a great way to learn.
Bringing in representatives from other specialties to teach us things, and recognizing that other specialties also have expertise in aesthetic procedures and things related to the face. I think that was an important part of what we started in 1991.
I had the opportunity to bring the rhinoplasty course to Chicago. It was actually Regan and Jean that brought the course to Chicago. We had a lot of competition. We had to stand up and try to have courses as good as the Key Biscayne course that Bobby put on and the Portland course that Ted put on.
The Learning Center started by John Dickinson. I suppose you can consider it as really sort of a foundation or the seed for education of residents and fellows.
At the time of the founding of the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery in 1964, there were three of the founding group who were vitally interested in teaching soft tissue surgery and soft tissue surgery techniques to otolaryngologists. Very little to no attention was paid to doing or teaching soft tissue surgery in ENT residents anywhere in the country. John Connolly, Richard Ferrier, and even more pointedly, John Dickinson decided they wanted to do something about that. To that extent, John Dickinson created a manual for soft tissue surgery and started conducting a workshop at Pittsburgh where he was. He became vitally interested in a videotape learning center, and about that time, John died. But Terry Davidson had come along and had done his fellowship with Richard Webster. He went back to his own residency at UC San Diego, where Alan Nahum was the chair of the Division of Otolaryngology. And Alan and Terry then approached Richard Webster and asked if he, Richard, would come to San Diego to make a series of videos on basic soft tissue repairs, following on to the soft tissue workshops that we'd already gotten going. Then Terry and Chuck Cox and Richard Webster created this incredible group of tapes which became the start of the Learning Center. I really can't emphasize too much the role of the Learning Center to the growth of knowledge of facial plastics over the past 40, 50 years in residencies and fellowships.
It is really where we do the most good for the largest number of people. When you educate others, you have the opportunity to exponentially increase the number of people that will benefit from the knowledge that you have.
The Academy is becoming ever more sophisticated in electronic media. We have this beautiful new web portal called Learn.
The Internet is the newest tool that the Academy has to continue its educational commitment, and it's going to provide a wonderful opportunity for physicians to have distance learning, to maintain their certification, and to maintain their licensure. The new website is a great tool to accomplish that end.
You got a friend in me. You know you got a friend in me. You got troubles and I got them too. There ain't anything I wouldn't do.
It's all about this camaraderie that we have, and people in this specialty don't eat their young like other specialties, but rather they nurture them.
The real reason to become real active in the Academy is the mentorship, the positive feedback that you really get from your mentors and your peers.
I've had great mentors, from Peter Hilger to Keith LaFerrier, Ted Cook, Norman Pistoric, Dean Toriumi, a whole host of others, not only educating me in terms of technique, but also in welcoming me into the academy.
When early on you have senior members pushing you in that direction, then you tend to get a sense of belonging and the need to contribute to the growth of the and future of this academy.
I trained in New York City at Mount Sinai Medical Center with three wonderful mentors, Hugh Biller, Bill Lawson, and Mark Erkin. They were three masterful surgeons who were relentlessly results-driven, who really taught me wonderful skills and techniques. Then went on to University of Miami and trained with Bob Simons and Rick Davis. Again, two wonderful surgeons who taught me tremendous new knowledge of techniques and skills. And I think Bob Simons taught me how to love facial plastic surgery and love the people who share that same feeling.
I learned many things about fundamentals of nasal surgery from Dr. Fisher that he learned directly from Dr. Caudle. And then a new faculty member came on early in my residency, a Dr. Bill Shockley, who had learned much of his craft from Fred Stucker. So I feel, in a way, I've been trained by these individuals, albeit indirectly. And then Ted Cook, and Ted, of course, he trained with Bill Wright, he trained with Richard Ferrier and with Richard Webster. So indirectly, I've had input from the giants in our field.
And I can remember people like Jack Anderson and Dick Webster just literally giving me the time of day and answering any questions I had and encouraging me to get on the bandwagon.
Well, there are several people, I would probably say, but probably the first that comes to mind is my fellowship preceptor, Dr. Shan Baker, because I trained at Michigan and then I stayed in my fellowship with Shan. And he embodies, for me, the same important attributes that the Academy has, which is emphasis on education, emphasis on patient safety, good patient care, but without compromising your integrity and your ethics. Dr. Baker was one of the first doctors I ever sat with who would say to a patient, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find it for you.
There's no question that Chuck Krause was a leader in our field, and so he was a role model for me.
So I trained with Dr. Fred Stucker at LSU Shreveport, and I knew very early on that I wanted to be a facial plastic surgeon, and primarily because he was there and I kind of wanted to be like him.
And I was a lucky guy because I went to visit Gene Tardy, and he became my teacher and my mentor.
I mean, when you get introduced to facial plastics through Bobby, they go hand in hand. The board, the academy, and rhinoplasty. I mean, you can't separate the three. And he pulled me aside, sat down with me, and said, you know what, Jeff? I want you to go out and meet my friend Shelley Kabacher. I think sometimes it was done so my fellowship director, Shelley Kabacher, could get the inside scoop on what some of his other colleagues were doing all up and down the California coastline. And meanwhile, when I was there, the guys who I would go visit, whether it was Harry Middleman, Greg Keller, Leslie Bernstein, Larry Shanerock, Richard Good, they also at the same time would ask me, well, what's Shelley doing, or how would Shelley do this? So I think it was their way of surreptitiously get the inside scoop on what their colleagues are doing.
I've kind of cut my teeth on the academy with the old ENT hospital with Jack Anderson. He used to sit around the lounge there and kind of run everybody's business, including the academies, from the coffee lounge there. And I remember getting calls from Jack Gunner, who was in trouble because he'd done some kind of peel and the plastic guys were after him, and Jack handled all those things from there.
What compelled me to teach, I was going to give back to the younger doctors as the senior doctors gave to me.
I think one of the best kept secrets on the planet is that there's no better way to learn than being a teacher at one of our meetings.
So like the others, you shall die
in agony tonight at the stroke of 9. Goodbye, Alfie. Goodbye, nothing. We're going to stick together. One for all and all for one.
I feel very fortunate to have been a product of the fellowship program of this Facial Plastic Surgery Academy. I remember when I was a resident, I heard some of my colleagues saying, gee, I'd like to take a fellowship, but I don't think I can afford to take it. My philosophy was that I don't believe I could have afforded not to have taken a fellowship because of what it's meant to me. Having the opportunity to stand there beside Jack Anderson and Wally Berman and Richard Webster day in and day out, not only to see the operation, but to follow the postoperative results and to learn from those three men has proven to be one of the most valuable years of my life.
When I was a fellow with Galen McCullough in Birmingham, I saw how passionate he was about the Academy, how involved he was, and how he fulfilled a role not only as a teacher within the Academy, but as one of the young leaders. And one of the unwritten understandings doing a fellowship was that once you complete your fellowship, you in turn go out and teach, and you be a mentor to the younger people coming up.
I was the first fellow of the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. That was in 1972. I was lucky enough to have a traveling fellowship. First I went to Houston, Texas with Bill Wright, and then I went to Jack Anderson, and then finally Dick Webster in Boston. This fellowship was really very important to me, as well as to the development of facial plastic surgery in Canada.
I was really intrigued with facial plastic surgery and decided to see if I could spend some time with Bill Wright. And he accepted me as his fellow, and that's where it all started.
I did a fellowship with Dr. Richard Webster in 1979. Fellowships were significantly different back then. There was no stipend, and we moved out to Boston for a year, and my wife supported us as an operating room nurse.
Frankly, I learned from my fellows. They keep me honest and keep me on my toes, so it's a two-way dividend for both parties.
I guess the sentinel moment for me was when I heard about Dr. Perkins. I knew from the moment I heard about him that that's where I wanted to train, and really I became a facial plastic surgeon in his hands.
And I was lucky enough to be selected as one of the facial plastic fellows at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And there, I had the privilege of working with Regan Thomas, a little bit with Gene Tardy and Gary Brigette, but the majority of my time was with my mentor, Dean Toriumi.
I believe that the Academy is my home, and people like Ted Cook, when you do your fellowship with Ted Cook, it's almost like he adopts you as one of his own. It's a lifetime commitment.
My experience as a fellow under Dr. Quatella was spectacular. The volume of cosmetic and reconstructive cases you see with him, the international experience with microtia reconstruction seems unparalleled to me.
I had a phenomenal fellowship experience for my year in Atlanta. I really wanted to focus on a private practice model, and that's because I knew that that's what I wanted to do after fellowship. So I picked Dr. Silver because of his personality, his warmth, his attitude towards teaching, and also because I felt it would give me the model to emulate for after when I was finished my training.
The Academy has been instrumental not only in the educational background, but in allowing these fellowships to further our ability to provide these services, to teach us how to do it, and then not leave us at the end of fellowship, but to mentor us through the whole process, because education is lifelong.
The Academy has grown in stature, it's grown in size, and it's grown in influence, really, throughout the United States, and it's become the world standard.
Oh, wow, I think the sky's the limit for the Academy.
So what we've achieved with the capital campaign is only a small token of where it's going to go. Hopefully it's the seed money to get us to financial independence.
I'll explain the system a little. It was very simple. You meet once a year and you have a nice dinner and you invite people and ask them to pay a substantial amount of money.
Maybe the president. And I just thought, I had to make this thing fun. And we've been doing this now for 17 years.
The purchasing of our Academy headquarters was also a major milestone because it gave us a home that we can call our own, that we own now outright, and that also gives you a sense of solidarity.
How do you choose who to give money to, Howard?
Well, I don't give it to people. I give it to things that people are doing. And I'm very much interested in doing something for the board.
Looking back, I think there are several big events that occurred during our lifetime when we were involved. Number one, I think, was the Georgia lawsuit, right? The so-called skim milk lawsuit, because that really helped us in the public relations.
And there must have been thousands of articles written deriding otolaryngologists. And finally, in Georgia, they libeled me. And we thought, well, this was a chance to really go to court and have some sort of landmark decision.
Anderson explained the Academy's rationale for a name change in an article entitled, "An Old Medical Specialty Puts on a New Face and Head and Neck," published in the Southern Medical Journal's 1980 edition. A summary of this article appeared in the Journal of the Medical Association in Georgia in October 1981, jointly bylined by Anderson and local facial plastic surgeon William Silver. It did not take long for the plastic surgeons to respond with a castigating article entitled, "Things Are Never What They Seem, Skim Milk Masquerades as Cream." And suddenly, the battle lines were drawn over what we call ourselves and whether we had the skills to do what we purported to do. There is no way we would have won the legal battle in 1986 without the courageous leadership of Jack Anderson, the persistent commitment of Galen McCullough, who was the Academy's secretary, the broad vision and experience of Richard Webster, or the well-documented, skillfully presented training of a young fellow named Bill Beeson. The testimony of those four men, brilliantly orchestrated by our new Atlanta-based attorney Tom Rhodes.
And there was a lady on the back row who raised her hand. And I said, "May I answer her question?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Hey, when you do that forehead lift, do you have to shave any hair?" I want to tell you, the case was over. At that moment.
I think he got $1.2 million from the skim milk suit, and he gave that to the Academy, actually to the foundation. It's just ironic that plastic surgeons' money was used to launch our board. It's just, I think, one of the great ironies of our history, really.
And I was in the hallway, and I looked down the hall, and Galen and Peter Adamson were having a conversation, and they both turned and looked for me, and one was pointing their finger at me. I feared I might be in trouble for something, but what it was is the decision had been made to activate the ABFPRS.
It took us 2 years and about 60 Academy members until finally we had a written and oral examination.
Not enough credit can be given to men like Don Chatham, Leslie Bernstein, Lee Rowe, Peter Adamson, and Ted Cook, who worked long hours to forge an examination that was initially used to test fellows before becoming part of the certifying process.
As of 2013, we have over 1,082 surgeons who have completed ABF-PRS certification requirements. And they are allowed to disclose their certification in all states in the United States as well as all the Canadian provinces.
From Florida to California, from Texas to Colorado, in whatever state our training experience and knowledge was measured against the accepted gold standards, we were judged worthy. David Hunter, in 1992, put his work and reputation on the line in Oklahoma. Victory in Florida in 1994 would have been hard to come by without the personal context and efforts by Ferd Becker and Nathan Knocklis. And that's how it happened. In Colorado, there was Arlen Myers and Don Blakesley. In Maryland, Ira Papel and John Price. In Minnesota, Peter Hilger. In Texas, Russ Krydell, Bradford Pat, Gene Alford, Becky McGraw, Jennifer Porter, and Joe Leach. In Washington, Wayne Larrabee and Craig Murakami. In Nebraska, Steve Denenberg. In New Jersey, Sig Sattenspiel and Paul Carniel. In New York, Bill Lawson, Tom Romo, Steve Perlman, Vito Quintella, and Bob Kellman. In Pennsylvania, David Ryder. In Indiana, Bill Beeson and Steve Perkins. In Kentucky, Randy Waldman and Don Chatham. In Wisconsin, Mark Conley. In Montana, James Jarrett. And let us not forget the outstanding contributions and efforts of one Peter Adamson in Canada. Of course, the landmark coup occurred in California in 1995. Here, the battle was pitched on the playing field with clearly demarcated lines and goals. Senate Bill 2036 asked for proof that our team was equal to the 24 current organizations in that venerable federated league called the ABMS. Critical to our victory in California was the presence and the information and education brought to voting committee members by local facial plastic surgeons. Individuals like Larry Shainrock, Dick Fleming, Richard Good, Roger Crumley, David Bray, Harry Middleman, Shelley Kabacher, Paul Donald, and Bob Del Honco, to name a few.
Senate Bill 2036, and I still remember like it was yesterday, from 20 some odd years ago, we were able to compare the training tracks and show that functionally we were better trained in the face than anyone in the room.
The ABMS equivalency decision in California has been a real game changer. So having the state of California, which probably has more cosmetic surgeons than most second world countries, be able to say this is the higher standard and as equivalent as any other ABMS board was very important.
Surgeons want to utilize what the ABF-PRS has come to represent, and that is the gold standard.
Board certified means everything. My training was in facial plastics at the time, but people would come to the office and they didn't know whether to call me an ear, nose, and throat doctor. They didn't pronounce otolaryngologist. And then the idea that I was a facial plastic surgeon, that didn't mean too much. It took years to develop this.
Board certification means tremendous amount to me. I was recognized as the 750th diplomat of the American Board of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery.
And so it made us a real specialty, a recognized specialty within our own home fronts as well as overall nationally and indeed internationally. Another memorable event in terms of being involved with the Academy was developing our journals.
And then Bobby put me in charge of the, I don't know what the committee was, but it was to make a journal. Bobby wanted a journal. And I stalled, I hate to tell Bobby this, but I stalled for, 5 years, 8 years, something. Because I didn't think we had enough of real science to start a real journal. I didn't want to do it until we could launch. And Bobby was pushing, but I just kind of stalled him and lied to him.
And being the naive guys we were, Wayne and I said, sure, let's go do it.
And Bobby was pushing.
And so we effectively applied to the company that printed the North American clinics and established the facial plastic surgery clinics.
Bobby was pushing.
We decided that's a great thing, but you really need a peer-reviewed journal, one that can be cited.
The AMA was interested in having printing more journals for different specialties. So I contacted Wayne Larrabee and said, Wayne, why don't you call the AMA?
And as you probably know, the archive systems are all under the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA.
But other doctors didn't want us to have our journal called the AMA Archives of Facial Plastic Surgery. They wanted to call it something else, like Journal of Facial Plastic Surgery, to make it different or almost less important than the other journals.
And ultimately, we succeeded, and that has continued to be a very reputable and world-renowned journal.
It's all good now.
I'm always reminded of the time that I went to a facial plastic meeting that was part of the combined otolaryngologic spring meetings, the CASM. And my chairman at the time had many stickers, but facial plastics was not one of them. He had not registered. Facial plastics, however, had a guard at the door who was checking badges.
Police, where are your badges? Badges? We ain't got no badges.
And they did not allow him in because he didn't have a sticker for facial plastics.
We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
I remember him becoming exceptionally irate.
I'd like to believe that.
The Academy is a very special place. I can't think of a finer group of individuals to aspire to be like. I come to these meetings and it's like coming home.
I attribute the preeminence of our Academy to its leadership.
And then we were very, very fortunate to have, without any question, the most enthusiastic supporter and advocate that anyone could ever have, and that's Bobby Simons. Has anybody ever been able to mimic his enthusiasm?
It's unlike many of the large big box organizations. We have a camaraderie. We're big enough to be effective. We're small enough to be personal.
It gives me something to lean my ladder against professionally. I can lean my professional ladder against an academy that represents such excellence in this field.
It's a fraternity that I really like being a part of. And I think one of the reasons that our academy is different is when you come to one of our meetings, there's almost no backbiting and negativism.
I'd like to believe that.
I think that gives us a little bit of an extra edge or a hunger or a sense of pride that I think is special.
It seems like everyone is very friendly and supportive of each other, and I love that.
I want to participate to the fullest, and that means giving back. In return, you get the rewards. You don't seek out the rewards, but they find you.
What's a hallmark of this organization is a real sense of collegiality and teamwork and respect for each other, too. That's unique, actually, in my experience, for the other organizations I'm a part of. I think there is something of a family atmosphere with the Academy. I don't know why that is, to be honest, but I appreciate it very much.
So I'm coming on my 22nd year. It's a great job, and I've got a great staff, and it makes my job very, very easy. You come to these meetings, and the staff interacts with members just like they're part of the family. And they feel an allegiance to the Academy like no other that I've ever seen anywhere else.
As a female surgeon in a specialty that has historically been dominated by men, in reality, I always felt like I had the Academy at my back.
There's always something new, there's always something that we can be doing better. And the Academy is instrumental in allowing us to become as specialized and as expert as we possibly can be in this one crucial area. My philosophy is that if you specialize in everything, you excel in nothing.
It's the people. You know, this is an organization that is made up of incredible people.
I go back to a picture I have of you and shaking hands almost across the water with Klaus Walder. So I wonder if you could talk to me a little bit about our early relationships with the international group, Klaus, and how that all got started and what part you played in that relationship.
I was in the first group doing that, and the first big meeting was held in Würzburg, Germany,
The faculty was Bill Wright, John Dickinson, John Conley, and myself. But from that, on the faculty from Germany was Klaus Walter. And that's when he got interested and started coming. And the next meeting, Jack Anderson came, and then later, I remember Galen was added. And at that meeting was Tony Bull from London. And I strongly recommended that Gene Tardy would come, and he kind of became the darling of that group.
My name's Julian Rowe-Jones, and I'm based in Guildford and in London in the UK. Interestingly, the European Academy began approximately in the 1970s as the Joseph Society, the name for obvious reasons, and it was really a club of enthusiasts. Tony Bull from the UK, Guy Jost from France, and Klaus Walter. And they were friends and enthusiasts, and they felt it was time, particularly in the ENT community, that facial plastic surgery was recognized.
So I'm very happy that, and I'm really grateful to the founders of the International Federation, that were Ted Cook and Wayne Larrabee. Wayne perhaps more with the idea, and Ted the driving force with that. They were the first, and from Europe, Tony Bull.
When I went back to Colombia, facial plastic surgery did not exist as a specialty. And my husband, who's an attorney, always insisted that it was very important to have the proper credentials and the proper training in the field. The specialty in facial plastic surgery in Colombia started 12 years ago. The person who created that first program in Colombia was Fernando Pedrosa.
And in one of the early meetings in the 90s, when they were first conceiving the idea of the International Federation of Facial Plastic Surgical Societies, it's interesting to me, this picture, that you see some young, interesting faces here. Wayne Larrabee, that's Michael Stearns, that's young Tony Bull, Fernando Pedrosa, Ted Cook, Peter Adamson, that's Armando Gonzalez Romero. That could be Bandino. That's where the beginnings were for the international group.
Starting the Federation from scratch was, of course, difficult. We had a lot of administration things to do and no structure, no money, basically. Steve Duffy and the American Academy were instrumental in starting the International Federation, and still are.
I see, hopefully, the international area growing larger. It's already grown quite a bit in the 10, 12 years that we've established the Federation. And I see a lot more interplay between us as an American Academy and the International Federation.
When I did my first face-to-face mission to Vietnam, that mission was with Mac Hodges as director, and Dr. Hodges was a wonderful mentor, showing me how really an individual in primarily private practice can dedicate himself to something that he feels strongly about.
This is a specialty where a good percentage of the time we're treating normal people. We cannot make mistakes. So it becomes very important to be able to have an international credentialing body.
This is our first exam in 2013, and we had 14 candidates, of which 12 passed. So I think there's little doubt that over the past decade we have grown exponentially, both as Academy and within our stature internationally.
And we have now 1,000 members throughout whole Europe, and each year we're getting better and better, and the interest to facial plastic surgery in Europe is increasing in all the countries.
There's no doubt we will strive to be everything and every bit as good as the American Academy has been over the last 20 years.
May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you.
Each generation goes on, and then someone becomes a father, and someone becomes a son or a daughter, and then a mother, and so, you know, that is the ultimate definition of what Forever Young is.
I really like how the Academy is embracing younger physicians, getting them involved.
I think our Academy is filled with members with a deep sense of curiosity and a desire to discover and advance and improve. I think those are aspects of youth.
And I think that combination of always wanting to innovate, stay ahead of the scientific discovery, bringing in younger generations to join is what's going to keep us competitive and forever young.
The young surgeons of today are the senior figures of tomorrow, and without them the organization will disappear.
Forever Young, when I think of that phrase, you know, I think of vitality and energy and newness.
The very best tagline that we could have for our 50th anniversary celebration.
Bobby, what is he asking? What the hell is that?
Forever Young means to me to have the enthusiasm of an adolescent and probably the maturity of a sage diplomat.
You don't have to wait till the senior part of your career to have an opportunity to speak.
I see enthusiasm everywhere in this organization.
It's always reinventing itself. It is staying forever young.
I think it's a great theme, and if you look at, I don't want to say the old timers because I'm probably one of them, but if you look at the people who come to these meetings, we all have that at heart.
Dr. Simons completely embodies the thought of being forever young.
And it's a generational process that will never, ever go away.
We're all links in a chain, and we've had great clarity in defining how we've reached to the here and now. Our challenge is to extend the links forward into the future and keep it as robust and as strong as it is today.
So it means optimism coupled with opportunity. And I think that means something different than, say, forever great or forever wonderful.
I like that because I like the fact that we're going to be here forever.
As long as we continue as a group to have our young people assume the mantle of what now sort of my generation is holding, which we, I believe, took from such solid leaders before us.
And I'm constantly learning now, not from the older, more experienced people, but from the younger, experienced people.
A parting thought, I think I'd like to thank Jack Anderson for his wisdom and his foresight. And I can remember when Jack used to say, Fred, we have to get you more involved. We need you young Turks. And for someone to look at me today and think that I was a young Turk, by gosh, we've come a long way.